Does everyone recall in the previous module, in module 2, mention when we did a deep dive on the planning and document models, we reviewed something called sashimi and then sashimi incremental. We had,
Yeah, I remember.
so we had different phases or stages of development in play at different points in time simultaneously. We had an older version that was in the support mode, and then you'd have like a newer version that was going through the final testing for release, and then you'd have an earlier version, the latest, greatest version, an early alpha mode, or, before it's a beta, right? It's in the early stages of requirements engineering. So you have multiple things going on. You're seniors now, and in order to get a feel for how this works, we're going to be, it's not that it's our intent to do this, but there's a parallel here, and it's a kind of a teachable thing. We're going to post the final version of the module 1 assessment now that reconciliations have been completed. That will be released as soon as the class is over. I'm also going to post before the end of the week the module 2 assessment for your first attempt, as we're starting our review of module 3 material. Okay. So as soon as we finish a review of the module 2 assessment items with the first attempt, then we'll post the reconciliation. By that time, we'll have the assessment out. That way we can keep moving forward. So we're handling different aspects of module completion at the same time, which kind of looks and feels like sashimi or incremental, right? And incremental, again, is sort of a cross between, especially incremental, when you start combining these methods, incremental sashimi is like an overlap of waterfall, that's incremental, and then incremental sashimi is an overlap of iterations with sashimi. In any case, I'll go ahead and post that. Let's take a look at adaptive security engineering models. This is chapter 19 in the Stevens textbook, and it's also, I think it's 1.3 or 1.4 in the SAS manual. So if we look in here very quickly, and we're looking at it's 1.3, and it starts with the Agile Manifesto. So in the SAS textbook, this is where we're starting, 1.3. In the Stevens textbook, the chapter is called RAD, for Rapid Application Development. And in this context, we're not talking about a suite of development tools and utilities. We're talking about James Martin RAD and how rapid application development it's adaptive, right? So this is one distinction between one subject matter expert and another, and I do expect you to understand the difference there. We touched on this briefly in module 1, I think. Yes?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we want to be able to recite the 4 values and the 12 principles promoted by the Agile Manifesto. The fact that it was no small revolution is significant. And oftentimes when you claim a new territory, so to speak, it's not uncommon to see some statement of values associated with that. So values are the guiding, the guiding concepts upon which the 12 principles are built, right? So you can think of this as this is the foundation of the Agile house, and this is the walls and roof of the house, right? This is how we make that happen. And then what we'd like to do with the time remaining is cover as much of B and C student learning objectives as possible. So when you get a chance, review the content if you haven't already in 1.3. Just do that again and read chapter 19 if you haven't read chapter 19 in the Stevens book. So this is basically just a summary, and that's why all of the adaptive SE models are considered to be a flavor or variant of Agile. So when you look at these values and the related principles, you see some aspect of those in each of the rapid application development models. So it's not just Agile, it's also Scrum, Extreme Programming, James Martin, RAD, and so on. So in the year 2000, and that was 23 years ago, 17 thought leaders in software engineering met at a ski resort in Utah. Among them were John Kern, Kent Beck, Ward Cunningham, Ari Van Bennekom, and Alastair Cockburn. Now, those names are worth mention. Those are a bit like the founding fathers of our country. And in fact, what I'm going to do here is add this to the dictionary so Word doesn't think that's a misspelling. They were fed up with corporate control and systemic shortcomings of the traditional plan and document models. And in particular, these are self-starters. So I want to call out a primary difference. You can have mature programmers that are comfortable in their own skin. They're confident. They know what they know. They're not going to pretend. They're not going to put on airs. They're not worried about a paycheck necessarily, although that's probably a oversimplification of things. It's more about the process than the destination, right? And one of the things that they want to do is work as a team based on mutual respect. And it's not like we have a project. There are project leads, and what you'll find is that each of them take turns working leadership roles with one aspect of the development process or another, their own area of responsibility, where they happen to be the ranking subject matter expert. And if these folks were actually an Agile team, we could say maybe John Kern was an expert in backend database, and Kent Beck was particularly gifted with graphical user interfaces on the front end with the users, and Ward Cunningham is good with service creation and different programming and scripting environments and so on. Each of them would be responsible for those own areas, more like a special forces team, right? So I hope you remember that analogy. It's important to accept and respect everyone on the team. It's not like you have a strong project manager that's deciding for everyone. No, this is how it's going to be. This is what you're going to do, and this is when it's deliverable. And if you have problems, you better contact me. It's not that kind of thing, right? They were fed up, and they began this new idea. The other thing they were fed up about was, how do we do this solution development, and where are the users? I'm not waiting till the end to deliver something, only to have a user slap me down in the delivery, in the acceptance session where they validate that the features have been done. Oh yeah, we did the features, but that's still not what we want. because sometimes users don't know what they want, right? The 4 values espoused by the manifesto include individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? Now that interaction part is huge because each of you are going to be responsible for a certain process of interaction that you're going to demonstrate at different phases of the project, and the points that you're logging have to do more with the interactions on, let's say, in a Teams environment or on your servers, where there are certain things that have to happen in a certain process. And there are next steps and things that others are waiting for. And in terms of deliverables, when your part or component is complete and you'd like to see, does this run on other people's systems? Okay, it's done. I've demonstrated this working prototype on my system. Can you please try it on yours? That's an interaction, right? And that's called test-driven development. That's an example of, hey, I'm not waiting until the big demo. I want to know now, is this running on your, can this run on your screen? Now, by the end of this week, can you tell me yes or no, will my code and this module work on your system? That's called test-driven development. We'll get into that. TDD. You're testing as you develop. You're not going further on with other things. If it doesn't work with other systems on other, and it could be as simple as, hello, there's a permission or sharing requirement that has to be embedded in the code, right? Some software applications, integrated solutions, actually include scripts and code to configure the operational environment so that the NTFS and the share permissions are automatically executed, like an account that is used to run an application module. We would call that a service. Does everybody remember the operating systems class? An active application would be known as a service, right?
Yeah.
Service or a process. Yeah, service or a process. And how do you empower that service or process? Well, you can configure services. I don't want to go into all this now, but if we go into services, we can pull up a service and then go into properties, and then you can actually execute that software, or that you can run that service with an account. And it's called a managed service account. The password's automatically changed. Does everybody remember this? Kind of, sort of, maybe?
I remember.
Managed service account.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, if you have a service that's necessary for the modules to interoperate, and that service has to be running, create a managed service account. Configure it so that the password automatically changes every 30 days. And then that would be a great example of somebody handling a back-end process that has to do with the allocation of resources from the operating system, right? They stress working software over comprehensive documentation. What a contrast. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have any documentation. Let's dispel that right now. But what we are saying is, you know, I can document stuff after I get it running, but my focus is to get this thing going, get it working. And then, right, we do a little test-driven development. We test, we check, we validate. Now we'll add some comments in the code. Now we'll add something to support reference. Okay. Any questions so far with these first two?
None for me.
Do you remember in our previous class, and this wasn't done on purpose, I had a sample of an RFP. You remember how detailed that was?
Yeah.
We didn't even get to the contract much, did we? I mean, I did provide you with a sample contract and a sample statement of work. But the point is there is so much detail in that contract, right? Where's everybody's time and energy on the front side? Oh, that contract, right? In this case, it's more about, I really want to understand the customer. See, you can get a legal team to worry about contracts, or you can figure out how your customer ticks, what really matters. Like there could be some aspect of customer service that's a hot button for them. And it's the secret sauce in their business process. And your software could make it easy for them. And that would mean a whole lot more than, oh yeah, the database format can be exported and blah, 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 right? Now, I'm not saying that isn't important, because eventually that's something. But if you create a solution that changes the customer's daily life and it makes their process easier so they can grow their business, create a franchise, right? Some of this stuff happened. Anybody heard of a fast food restaurant called Chick-fil-A?
Yep. Yeah.
Say again? Yeah. So there's a great example of a integrated solution that was custom built to support a very different kind of restaurant. And part of how they do and what they do, that's what drives the software, not the other way around. Okay? You know how you go up to some drive-through windows and it's like, oh no, welcome to may I help you? And you're like, what did they just say? Right? And okay, that's a bad example of business process and technology, use of technology there, but yeah, that might be. Certain customers are going to want a very different feel, and it's part of what makes their restaurant appealing compared to everybody else. Responding to change over following a plan. It's a founding belief. It is a value. So it runs deeper than a principle, right? We have to be good at responding to change. Change is gonna happen. We're gonna start working in this environment and we're gonna prototype, but when we get to the production, we're gonna have to use a compiled programming language that's much more efficient, and we have to think, oh, no, that's not gonna work because the backend doesn't have these hooks that are just as easy to, oh, but this platform does. You have to know that the only constant is change. And that is a wrinkle that traditional software engineering teams working in a planning and documentation mode have a hard time with. The whole idea is to reduce change, right? Change control, change management, right? We don't want people to just, we don't want our customers, we don't want our customers to confuse wants with needs. Because when they want something different, how dare they, right? I mean, we established the essential needs in a plan with documents, and now they want something different. Well, the belief or value that Agile is founded on is, yeah, that whole insisting on sticking to the plan, no, we're gonna focus on the needs. You don't get to have all your wants. That's not how we do things here. That's out the window. And let's face it, there are two, well, when it comes to solution developers, you're going to find out that you're probably in one camp or another. And it's not a bad thing to understand how you work best before you decide to jump into a solution development career path. Because if you understand, hey, I like working government, I like a plan, we're not changing the plan. Or, hey, I like being flexible, I like working with a customer, it's fluid. I get that there's change. You have to know where your strengths are. Now, any questions about the values before we continue? I know I kind of played those up a bit, but that was intentional.
No questions.
Okay. 12 principles are promoted by Agile. Okay. Customer satisfaction through early and continuous software delivery. You want to show and share, show and share, show and share at regular intervals. You want people to see, okay, yeah, the baby's in the second trimester now. The baby's in the last trimester now. It's a birthing process. You want parents excited, right? And you're not shy about the messy part. And they want to see something. They want to know what's changing, what's evolving. How are we coming with that thing we were? Oh, we solved that problem. Woohoo! Another barrier shattered, right? That's what keeps your customers satisfied. Accommodate changing requirements throughout the development process. So customers realize things and they get revelations in the middle of a development process. In the middle. Again, how dare they? Right? How dare they? We had a plan. No, this is a different way of working. You know they're gonna come. They're gonna. Hey, I was thinking, if we did it just a little different, we could do something no other business has ever done before, and that's where you get the Chick-fil-A. It's not just another chicken joint, right? Now, I got to give props to Popeyes. They got it. Oh my gosh, they got a killer. I got to give props to every chicken fast food place because they each do a certain thing, right, differently and well. But the point is you're going to have a customer that's your customer, and they're going to want to differentiate themselves. Frequent delivery of working software. Okay. In Scrum, they have this thing called sprints. Sprints are iterations. What we want to do is show some working stuff, show some working stuff, show some working stuff along the way. Collaboration between business stakeholders and developers throughout the project, right? So you have to involve more than just the customer. A business stakeholder are other people in the mix too. Like your customer depends on suppliers. Oh, oh, I didn't understand that. So what are they getting from the output of this solution that's gonna help their process, right? Does everybody understand where I'm going with this? If you work in a restaurant or any kind of business. Support, yep, support, trust, and motivate the people involved. It's all right. So there's a lot of slop by traditional advocates that say, yeah, we're not moving a latte machine. No, foosball. No, we're not putting a foosball table in the workplace. Has anyone ever heard about what it's like working at Google? Have you ever seen movies about, getting a job at Google? Because it's been popularized in movies and media, right? And in TV shows, places like Google.
Yeah.
And in Facebook, right? You work in a place or in Apple, right? You motivate people. If people say, man, I gotta eat. After a point, I just have to eat. And if I have to get on a bus and then I have to go 30 minutes and then, and why do you have to? Well, because I'm vegan and I'm not going to apologize for having a different lifestyle. That's what I do, right? Well, maybe you add some vegan options to the company, the company cafeteria. That's just one example of motivating, right? So enable face-to-face interactions. right? Communication is more successful when development teams are co-located. That means physically in person, or at the very least, they have frequent face-to-face with Zoom, right? And that has changed things quite a bit. We're more comfortable working face-to-face with Zoom, so we don't necessarily have to be physically there. It's hugely different, though, when people are physically there. I'm just going to say that. Working software is the primary measure of progress. Not milestones, not deliverables. It's not project management with a Gantt chart. It's stand and deliver. Is your stuff, is your junk working or not? To stand or fall. Everybody stands or falls on their own merits. Agile process to support a consistent development pace. Steady wins the race. Now they do have sprints, okay, and that's an acronym that's used in Scrum. But basically, you have to have a consistent development pace because you have to be able to establish a repeatable and maintainable speed. And so and repetition, you also have to be able to repeat demonstrations of modular components at every stage of the process. Have any of you ever developed other modules and then you go back and now the earlier modules aren't working for some reason? Has anyone ever experienced that? Attention to technical detail and design enhances agility, simplicity, right? You don't want lots of complex stuff. Keep it simple, keep it working, keep it moving. Self-organizing teams encourage great architectures, requirements, and designs. The team decides, all right, let's divide and conquer. Who's handling the database? Who's handling the GUI? Who's working the service creation on the server? What kind of tiers are we working with our web solution, right? You have 3-tier, you have N tier. How many tiers do we have if we're talking N tier, right? Everybody takes a tier. Regular reflections on how to become more effective. You have to communicate. You have to communicate. If you are a reclusive, self-important nerd, and I'm sorry, that's a terrible stereotype, but let me repeat it again. If you are a reclusive, self-important, God's gift to coding kind of nerd, this is a painful, it's a painful career path. Especially, I mean, you might be better suited in like a more traditional environment where people can appreciate your prowess. I have seen very flamboyant personalities, and they're very hard to work with. And I guess that's where some of those comments are coming from. Yeah. Okay. And I didn't get that from a textbook. Right. Regular reflections on how to become more effective. You have to be interested in self-improvement, process improvement, team improvement, right? So that the team works more effectively and efficiently. You can't have superstars and it's all about them, okay? And that's one of the principles for Agile. And if you have people who are like, yeah, this team couldn't make it without me, the coach needs to tap them on the shoulder and explain to them, that's not this kind of gig. You're part of a SEAL team 6, and you're all that when it comes to the explosives and stuff, but the rest of this depends on other people, and you have to learn to get along. Okay. In general, we're talking 1 to 2 week cycles, right? The idea is to get a working but incomplete prototype to the customer. Fast, velocity, progress, right? That matters more than anything else. All right. I'm going to stop here. I want to spend some quality time developing the next paragraph, and I don't want to rush it. Given the information we have just shared, can anyone think of a question or a comment you'd like to share that relates to the information presented?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Well, I will close out the session. Good luck on your first attempt at the Module 2 assessment. Please complete your final attempt at the Module 1 assessment by Tuesday of next week. Have a great weekend.